Hey, hey, it's Brenda Meller bringing you back for another edition of my LinkedIn Live show. I like to call this Social Media Pie because I bring on inspiring people, and I have with me here today Cheryl Parks to inform and educate you. And Cheryl, how are you doing today? It's a delight to see you online.
I am excellent and I am so happy to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, I likewise, and we were chatting pre-show, and we were talking about the fact like I'm a marketer, Cheryl's a salesperson, and we both kind of feel like we complement and we learn from each other. And sales feels very foreign to me, and marketing is not, your area. So I think we're gonna help and learn from each other, Cheryl. I'm really looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it too. It's going to be a great
Awesome.
conversation.
Good. Well, hey, I want to welcome our audience. And in the pre-pandemic days, Cheryl, I would tap the microphone and I would say, is this thing on? Can you guys hear me in the back? When we're doing a live stream, we don't know whether the live stream is picking up until someone messages and comments and says, yes, I can hear you. And right now I'm waiting to see if any comments come in. Every now and again, I have an instance where StreamYard and LinkedIn don't play nicely together. Either LinkedIn doesn't grab the baton from StreamYard, the stream, and pull it over, or, the connection for whatever reason from StreamYard to LinkedIn isn't working. So I like to wait and see if someone could please comment and let us know that the live stream is working. If I don't see a comment within like the next 30 seconds, Cheryl, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the link from YouTube and then I'll share that on LinkedIn. I'm actually got my LinkedIn going in the background right now. It's got a black screen on it, which is not a good sign. So that tells me something is happening with StreamYard or LinkedIn that they're not communicating nicely. So let's give it just a minute here. Did you ever have these days pre-pandemic, Cheryl, where like the AV wasn't working, the PowerPoint slides the
Oh,
screen went blank, like right as you're starting, right?
100%, 100%. I see some comments here. So
Oh,
I think
yay.
we're
They
good.
just started
Yes.
coming in. Thank you so much, Christy. It says we can hear you. Thank you so much. Sina sign. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing
Cena,
that correctly, but thank you. Do you know this person?
I do. I
Okay.
do. Hey, Cena, thanks for joining.
Christina. Okay, good. I always like to correct myself on names if I'm mispronouncing. We have Linda joining us on LinkedIn. Yes, it looks like LinkedIn is up and going. Kenyi, thank you so much. And Sina, we really appreciate your comments. So, all right, so we're going to jump into our conversation. You can see right above me, the topic we're going to be talking about today is really kind of related to what's happening with the whole buying cycle because of the pandemic. So big changes in why buyers buy post 2020. And when we were first talking about the title, I was kind of feeling like 2020, it feels like forever ago. And it also feels like we've been in 2020 for the past 3 years too.
Right.
So before we jump into that conversation, Cheryl, why don't you take a few minutes, tell us a little bit about you and your business?
Sure. So thank you so much again for having me. My name is Cheryl Parks. A lot of people know me as the sales growth coach, and I specifically focus on corporate teams and leaders to help them really leverage their own unique and natural voice so that they can land more clients without being salesy or scripted. My specialty is working with cross-functional teams. I actually absolutely love that. And I come from 25 years and selling over $25 million in corporate sales to Fortune 1000 companies like Wells Fargo, Discover Financial, E-Trade, Kaiser Permanente. So I've got some solid experience working with internal teams as well as the client team. And I'm seeing a lot of changes in the landscape, changes that some people already know about, and then other changes that maybe haven't come to the forefront.
That's awesome. And I love hearing kind of the backstory when I ask people to tell them about. I mean, I could read your bio, but I always feel like when people tell about their business in their own words, we gain a little something extra.
Yeah.
And what I loved in your description is you come from a lot of years of experience. So you have that ability to see trends as they're happening and understand how things are impacting the industry. So I think this is
Yes.
going to be a very timely conversation for all of us here today. Now,
Yes.
before we jump in, I want to let you guys know I actually know Cheryl by way of I belong to a program. It's the Big Money Movement, which was created by Liz J. Simpson. I'll tag her in comments in just a moment. And I had a couple of coaching calls with Cheryl. Cheryl's helping me with my business, kind of the evolution of Meller marketing, what I'm doing with LinkedIn coaching and training, and helping me build my confidence in myself too. I don't know if I'll ever get away from the imposter syndrome, Cheryl, but you have helped me come miles from where, I mean, 6 months ago to today,
I
I
love
feel
it.
like much more confident. So when we were chatting, Cheryl, I'm like, we started talking about, some different topics related to the sales cycle. And I'm like, oh, I always feel like when I'm in a conversation with someone, I'm like, I wish other people could hear this. So I said, why don't we do a LinkedIn Live and we'll talk about this? And
Mhm.
Cheryl agreed. So we're going to have a conversation, not just between me and Cheryl today, but for all of you. And the great thing is here, it lives on LinkedIn. It's also going to sit on YouTube and on Facebook. So you can come back and watch this again later. So with that said, Cheryl, what's happening in the market right now? What's happening with the changes in how buyers are buying nowadays?
So I'm going to give a little bit of context, and you really kind of hit on it slightly as you were speaking just now. So my background, I come from not only selling through the tragedy of 9/11 in 2001, but also the financial downturn in 2008, and now, of course, 2020. And there are things that happen, and I always point out, right? So after the tragedy of 9/11, really, I'm pretty sure most people can remember walking your whole family to the gate, right, and waving to grandma on the plane and saying goodbye. And that does not happen anymore. I don't think we were ever going to go back to that. Much like here we are post pandemic, or I'll just say moving toward the end of the pandemic, hopefully. Yeah,
Right?
hopefully, right. I don't have any information about that, but here we are, and we're moving in that direction. And there are going to be things that
Mm,
don't come back, right? And there
mm,
there are good, solid reasons for it. Some of it is just the evolution of sales and business and life in general, and other things have to do with the fact that it's not cost effective, things of that nature. So I really am coming with three main points. And again, some of them might be refreshers, others might be something that you just never thought of. So let us know how that plays out. So the first thing that I would mention is the no like trust factor, which we all know about, but right now the no like trust factor is exponentially high. And that is because just in a very general sense, we all are having to trust each other in terms of, just moving in the world, right? Is the person that's coughing next to you, are they okay? Is it just a cold? Is it, all of those things, right? So our senses are on high. And I can tell you that, just in what I'm reading, the no like trust factor for sales is not getting higher. It's
mhm.
actually getting lower. And so there is that piece where it's really important to build trust. And that is beyond the build rapport. It's really build a relationship, right? It's
Right.
a matter of understanding the buyer and what's important to them so that they can lean on you as a trusted advisor.
Yeah, it's
So that would
interesting that you
be.
say that. I was in a conversation with someone just yesterday. It was a Zoom call, it was a discovery call, right? And at the beginning, I find myself during these phone calls nowadays, Cheryl, where it's not just like small talk. How's the weather where you are today? It's more like, how are you doing? Like, how are you really? Are you okay? You okay? Is today
Right.
still good? Like, because we're on this mental roller coaster of emotions and family issues and everything nowadays. Like, I think that's really
100%.
important, and I think that probably plays into that building trust, right, in the initial conversations.
100%. It's no
Mhm.
longer, as you mentioned, how's the weather? How is traffic getting in today? Right. Because there's typically no traffic for a lot of us. But people are remote teaching their children. You just never know when the 5 or 6 year old is going to run through the screen and,
Right.
kind of wave and that kind of thing. So it's becoming much more personal and intimate, a little bit faster, and making space for people. Right. I mean, as you mentioned, is still a good day, right?
Right.
Because we're still in this daily mode of like things are changing and happening. So that's a
Mhm.
really good example.
Yeah. Yeah, good.
Yeah. So the second what I'll call a nugget is on that same in that same vein. Really, it is, and this has kind of always been the way I looked at it. It's really important to understand the buyer's journey. And when I say that, the buyer's journey is not the sales journey, right?
Mhm.
So they don't necessarily call things, the buyer doesn't call things the same thing that we call them when we're selling, right?
True.
So the buyer's journey has 100% to do with problem identification, solution exploration, then the development of their requirements. And then from there, it becomes okay, let's look around to see if there's a service provider or supplier that can help us solve these problems. The
Mm.
really big part is typically sales is not called in until they get to building requirements, right?
Okay.
So unless you've got that relationship that you're already working on, which is ideal, right? Or you just happen to hit something at the right time. Typically, if they're doing outreach, they're about 70% of the way through their entire process of decision making, right?
Right.
And so you're coming in, you have to be at your highest level of understanding the buyer's journey and understanding how you bring what you bring to get an outcome or an impact, or I call it the impact of the outcome, right? So they're buying an outcome, but really it's the impact of the outcome that they're looking for.
I want to
So
repeat
that's
that, and I want to put that up on screen. So when buyers
mhm,
contact you, they're already 70% of the way through the process. Is that what you said?
yes.
Wow. That's
100%.
amazing.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, so if I give you examples, you'll understand why. And we all do it, right? So we're in a review society where you can gain information, at a fingertip, right? You can not only start to research something, so they do online research, they do offline research, which is,
Mm,
I'm talking to somebody at lunch and I say, hey, we're looking for this. And they say, oh, I know somebody. I
right.
used to have a manager that would say, I got a guy. Okay, this is a long time ago, right? Okay, so then from there, they're literally doing their own research, looking at reviews and things of that nature. So there's a lot of research they've already done before you potentially get that phone call or that email or something. And I'm going to include this in the chat, via your company, right?
Right.
That says we've got some interest. And you have to go in at your highest level, and that doesn't mean going in and saying, "So what do you do?" Right?
Right.
You have
Right.
to be, yeah, you have to be really prepared. You have to understand what the landscape is, and then get a true sense of what they're looking for, so that you can get to the impact of the outcome for them.
That's really relevant. And I find it's funny. I even think about sometimes I get LinkedIn messages, Cheryl, and the person and they're pitching you, and then they follow up with, so tell me a little bit about what you do. I'll reply back, and I try not to be like snide about it, but I'm like, it would actually there's a section on my LinkedIn profile. It's actually called the about statement. And it's like I try to like, how do I say this but without coming off like snarky? If you want to
Yes,
learn about me, look at my about statement.
about
Like the
section.
research is out there, so let's not bore that person with doing it. Like let's have them do the work for themselves,
Right,
right?
right. And I completely agree with you that it is helpful to hear in your own voice or in
Right.
their own voice what they
Sure.
do,
Mhm.
but not so much that you need the complete outline of what the company does, right?
Right, right.
Yeah. So, yeah, just what's important to them as, in their scope of where they're working. So,
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I really focus on. And just as much as the buyer, and let me just set some context. I'm
Mhm.
coming from a complete sales perspective. I've never been a buyer at a major corporation. So I want people to know that this is a lot of what I hear, what I've learned in talking to people and
Mm.
understanding what the landscape looks like. But I will also add, in addition, as much as they have more information at their fingertips,
Mhm.
their confidence level around what they're buying is not as high as it should be. So
Okay.
it's our job, it's our responsibility to help them navigate their buying decision, to serve them, to support what they're doing in terms of that solution exploration, as well as whether or not you can get them an impact to the outcome. So that's also key. Is just the fact that they've got all this information, but the sales cycle is taking longer, right?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
it's taking longer because there are like 6 to 10 decision makers involved in the decision now. It used to be it was one or two, and
Yeah.
now it's just a cross-functional group making a decision for the organization to be sure that they get the outcome that they're looking for.
So there's more, it sounds like there's more that's being evaluated in terms of like ROI and the value of the investment. Is that something that's changed during the pandemic, Cheryl, or is that been a gradual process that you're seeing the decision making?
Candidly, this what I see is this started
Mhm.
after '08, right? So it
Yeah.
started after '08 and it's really bubbled up, and now it's just locked in. And I'll tell you the reason I
Right.
think it's locked in is because you don't have to coordinate travel for 6 to 10 people anymore. You
That's
just
true.
get them in a Zoom call, and now it's just coordinating schedules and getting consensus around, whether the solution can get them to an outcome. So I think it's really bubbled up because of the mandate. I'll just
Yeah.
call it that.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's
Yeah.
like that bigger focus on, I don't want to say accountability, but it's the ROI factor.
Yes.
What's the return on what we're gonna get, and what are we gonna get in terms of results and output from this? Now I'm curious
Mhm.
on the Zoom front. I was wondering when we were booking this conversation. And by the way, if you're just joining us, we're talking about big changes in why buyers buy post 2020. And I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and we were talking about the fact that it was on a Zoom call. And there's
Mhm.
like, do you do virtual presentations? I'm like, I was doing Zoom before it was cool. Like
Right.
before, I wish I would have invested in 2019. But a lot of us are doing like these sales calls, these presentations, proposal
Mhm.
conversations in Zoom calls. Do you think that thing's gonna is it gonna stick, Cheryl, or do you think we're gonna shift back to more
Yeah.
in-person meetings? What do you think?
It is definitely going to stick. And again, it's for, reasons like what's cost effective to have,
Mhm.
6 people or 3 people traveling the country for a 2-hour meeting. I've been there traveling to Denver from California for the 1-hour meeting, things of that
Mhm.
nature. It's definitely going to stick. And from what I've read, and it's mostly like Gartner and that kind of thing,
Yeah.
chief sales officers are actually investing not only in the coaching of their sales teams, but also the technology that's being used. That's
Mm.
the key piece, right? So
Yeah.
in a some type of survey, it's like 75% of them, and it's a small survey, but 75% of C-level executives are saying no, it's going to stick. Buyers and sellers are saying that they appreciate the digital space that we're in. And I think that is because of timing, and it's also safety. It goes back to what I said about the trust factor, right? It's a safety factor of, I'm having 6 people come into the office and I've got to go through
True.
the policy and procedure. So
Yep.
yeah, all of those dynamics are there.
What about handshakes? I'm wondering, like, is that gonna come back, or have you shaken somebody's hand? And I don't know. I mean, what do we do now with these if you do meet in person? Is that done? Are we elbow bumping and that's it, or what?
Candidly, I will tell you, I shook someone's hand. This is in a personal situation the
Yeah.
other day, and it was a flag for me, right? Just an immediate flag. So right. You're still very aware because we're not out yet, and so
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know about the elbow bump. I wouldn't mind just
I don't I
you
I
know.
feel like we have to kind of, like, ask, and I've been in a couple situations before, since, probably over the past 6 months where I'm getting out a little bit more socially. I'm not out
Mhm.
there professionally networking again, but, I think we all have to, like, come with, patience and understanding and assume that the other person's not gonna be comfortable with hugging or handshaking, and
Correct.
ask if they are, and if
Yes.
they are, great, we'll be pleasantly happy. If not, don't be like,
Yeah.
I had somebody kinda snub me. They're like, "Oh, you're not hugging? Well, that's kinda weird. Aren't you vaccinated?" And, it just going back to that know, like, and trust factor,
Mhm.
that was eliminated when the person kind of made me feel like I was not a good person for not hugging them, right? But, yeah, the handshake thing,
100%.
I think we're all at a different level, aren't we, Cheryl?
We are absolutely all at a different level. Some of us
Yeah.
live with individuals that are compromised, and so
Mhm. Yeah.
we're protecting them. Others of us are just saying, "Hey, it's not for me right now." And then
Right.
there's some that are saying, "You know what? This I'm good." Right. So I
Right,
think
right.
it's the making space for each other, which again carries over to the trust piece, and
Mhm.
um, and also just knowing that like, as you mentioned, just get the head nod. Is it okay? Can I come in for the hug or the
Right.
handshake? And be okay. I'm much more okay now when someone is like, no, right?
Well,
It
we know
used to
so much
be,
more, right?
I
I mean, when
know,
we think
right?
about, do you remember, like, at the beginning of 2020, I remember, like, in April, May, my hands were raw from, like, washing and scrubbing, and just, like, we
Yes.
didn't know what we know now in terms of how things are being transmitted.
Hmm.
So we're so much more knowledgeable now, but, it has impacted this whole, like, how we are communicating and interacting with fellow human beings and showing respect
Yes.
to our fellow human beings as well.
Absolutely. And that's the best part, right? Is that, and again, that goes to how you're building trust with the person by making space
Mhm.
for, who they are and what their preferences are. And a
Yeah.
lot of times I think, and I hate to say this because this is my profession, but in a lot of instances, sales, we weren't making space. It was like our agenda, right? But we
Yeah.
can't go forward with that anymore. It doesn't work. The buyers are much more savvy. I call them sober. They're very sober and savvy, not to make light of the word sober.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, they're well aware of what they need. It's just a matter of having somebody come in and serve them to get to the
Yeah.
outcome.
That's a really great point, and I
Yeah.
love that term too, because it makes us think, we can't just pull a fast one over. I mean, people are much more knowledgeable. There's a lot more information out there that people can do beforehand. And going back to your
Yes.
earlier point, they're already coming to us at the 70%, researched you line. So let's keep them on that right path, right?
Yes, definitely, definitely. And then the third piece is I will mention innovation, right? So
Mm.
so to your point about, are these tech tools, are they going to survive? And yes, they will, because literally video and chat are two of the tech tools that buyers are saying, I would be more than happy to have, digital self-service or remote buy. And I found the numbers staggering. There are like 72% of buyers have said, I would buy something up to $50,000 in a
Wow.
digital self-serve setting, right?
Really? Wow.
Yeah, yeah, I know. That's incredible. I would never think that,
That's
right?
it's yeah, when you think about, thresholds or what the buying level or, their capacity to be able to make purchases online, that's
Hmm.
amazing. But I think, we have been in some aspects, I wanna say, forced to use technology and even think about pre-pandemic, Cheryl, when companies were like, "We can't let our employees work from home. They won't get any work done." Well, lo and behold, we had no choice but to let them work from
Right.
home, and guess what? They got a lot of work done, and they were also pretty productive, and we figured out ways to
Yes.
communicate and to keep things going, right?
Yes, definitely. And I think the other thing that goes with that is companies really standing behind their product or their service. So
Mhm.
that's critical, right? It's a matter of, if I'm comfortable procuring something at $48,000, you best believe I expect the company to stand behind it, right? And
Absolutely,
if
yeah.
something goes left, to be very, very responsive. So that
Mhm.
responsiveness also goes into it, because I always say your process is part of your product. If they
Mm,
can see that you're highly responsive as they're doing their exploration,
yeah.
then chances are they'll understand that you're going to be that as well after the
Mhm.
buy, after they purchase something.
You just made me think about when I was back in my corporate days and I was head of marketing. I would have when vendors would approach us with different opportunities. I would always say I evaluate in three factors. I'm going to look at price. Price is
Mhm.
important to me, obviously. I'm going to look at the elements of the package, what's included. If I'm comparing one vendor to another, I'm also
Yes.
going to look at customer service.
Mhm.
Because when things don't go well, how do they respond? If there's a contract and they're like, "Well, you signed it on the contract and this is what it says, and
Right.
sorry, it wasn't our fault, it was your fault." I mean, do they help? I love that thought of with the process. Do they help to make good on and make sure
Mhm.
that we're satisfied? That was almost as important, if not more important. Like I would go with a vendor that was higher priced if I knew that they were always going to make the situation right from a
Yes.
customer service perspective. Are you finding that as an increasing trend as well?
Yeah, that started pre-pandemic, but it is
Mhm.
only getting higher. You just see a lot of conversation around what happens, because really you're only as good as what happens when the unexpected happens, right?
Right.
And so,
Mhm.
I mean, you can use the pandemic as huge unexpected, and then how do companies show up to support
Right.
the buy? And literally,
Mhm.
you are always training the buyer to understand how you operate, whether it's from the moment they contact you or you contact them, all the way through
Mhm.
the negotiation, the contract, and then the onboarding. And that's why I like team sales, because
Yeah.
team sales, you get to bring in the people that actually do the work, so they can
Mhm.
speak directly and start to build a relationship with the buyer early.
Good point. So when you say team sales, you're talking about that transaction is occurring not just with one person, but with multiple people. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you. Yes, absolutely. So, in the environments that I've sold, there were
Mhm.
typically about 3 to 4 people from different aspects within the organization in the
Mhm.
room, and that would be on the client side and the internal side, right? So we
Mhm.
might have the chief technology officer in the room, and I was more or less the coordinator of that process. But you might have
Okay.
the CTO in the room. You could also have, at that time they were called account managers, in the room. You
Mhm.
could have, obviously, me, the salesperson, in the room, and then typically a VP. You'd have either a VP of operations, you might have
Sure.
a manager of operations, but they were able to speak to their discipline, right? So rather
Mhm.
than having the salesperson just kind of try to explain how the operations work, yes, can I? Yes, but would the manager of operations be better? Yes,
Mhm.
right? They'd be able to actually walk you through,
Right,
and
they
can they?
understand it firsthand. Yeah.
Yeah, and can they answer exceptions better than
Mhm.
the salesperson? Yes, I know what I see, but
Right.
they actually live it, right? So yeah.
I'm gonna ask you a question. I know the answer to this because this is part of the training I got from you and the coaching I got
Okay.
from you. But do you recommend there's people watching right now that are trying to do to sell their business. They might be coaches, consultants, entrepreneurs,
Mhm.
marketers like me who aren't comfortable with the sales process. And then there's salespeople that are watching this as well. And maybe they're looking for guidance on the sales process. Now, my question is this: do you recommend that we bring more people into that discovery process than just one person? Or should that be later on that we bring in more of the team? What do you think?
So this really is, my answer is yes, but it is
Mhm.
100% based on bandwidth and resource, right?
True. Mhm.
So, it's really a matter of understanding how much bandwidth you have and using it wisely. So as a salesperson,
Mhm.
when I was heading up the process, I was always really aware that if I'm bringing that customer service or the account manager into the process, I have to be making really good use of their time because they
True.
could be taking care of our current clients and
Mm.
not spending time with prospective clients. Now, on the flip side of that, as they get to know the prospective client, there
Mm.
is really that handoff. And the last company I worked for did it in a very stellar manner where it was really a nice handoff so that as the onboarding occurred, I became secondary and the
Mm.
account manager or customer development executive became the primary focus. And he or she carried the ball from there.
That makes a lot of sense, and I've even had those situations when I was in that seat of being the buyer,
Mm-hmm.
where I was sold and working with this person, and then they started bringing in that account manager somewhere through the
Right.
process, and at some point, the baton kinda turned over, and I was working day to day with the account manager, but I had those days where I'd be, like, reaching back out to my salesperson, and he or she would redirect me to the account manager because the trust wasn't there yet. I'm like, "Well, this I bought from you, but they kept kind of like, "Well, you need to talk to Sheila. You need to, bring her back in."
Yeah.
It's a gradual process because of that trust factor, right? That starts
Yes.
early on.
Yes, it is. It's a transfer of trust. And
Mhm.
again, we're back to trust, right?
Yeah.
So it happens all the way through the process. And it's understanding when the appropriate time is, but also making sure that the account manager, the customer development executive is armed with all that they
Mhm.
need to be successful and
Yeah.
and to be sure that the client has the success they're looking for.
Yeah. Great. Excellent. Well,
Yeah.
Cheryl, our time is kind of flying by. And I want to start bringing our audience into the conversation. So I want to ask anyone who's watching right now, if you're watching live, if you could please drop into the chat right now a question you might have for Cheryl about the sales process and how the buyer journey is changing, or maybe just a comment to add to the
Yeah.
conversation. And if you don't want to do either of those, you could just do a quick like. You can give the video a quick like. That way we know that you're watching and it makes us feel good that you like the
Yes.
topic and that you enjoyed the conversation here today. And the great thing is in StreamYard now, Cheryl, they allow us to star comments. So I've already seen a few that I want to bring back up that were left a little bit earlier. I can't
Great.
see who the person is who said this. It says LinkedIn user. It's
Mhm.
either because you have yourself kind of semi-private or private on LinkedIn, or your third-party settings aren't set up to allow to show your picture. I'll go
Mhm.
back into the live stream later and I'll drop a comment with a blog that'll show you how to fix that. But this person was talking about a study that came out in 2021, building trust with a personal brand. I think a little bit later here, the person says it was by Brand Builders Group. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, Cheryl. You're probably familiar with the concept, though, right?
I absolutely am. And really, that's
Yeah.
a lot of what is happening on LinkedIn right now, right? I mean, it used to be, more or less a resume writing platform where,
Right.
if you were looking for something for a job, you would have your resume more or less on there. And now it's all about the personal brand and it's about companies using their personal brand. So thanks
Mhm.
for dropping the link. I would love to take a look at that. I'm not familiar with Brand Builders Group, but I
Yeah.
will definitely take a look at that. Yeah.
Good. I always like research. It reminds me when I was in grad school, you always want to like back up your claims with research from valid sources.
Yes.
Wikipedia is not a valid source. I remember my professor said, you got to look up, you got to find like a valid source. That's not a valid source for Wikipedia, but
Yes.
looking up those organizations, I think can be helpful. All right,
Definitely.
let's move on. Hey, Pam Lippett says she likes my snark. I don't like to be snarky. Like I'll be like 1-to-1 if Cheryl and I are on a call, I might tell her something and I'll be like, I wanted to say this. Instead, I'll say something else. But it goes back, Pam, to the point of your personal brand. What do you want to be known for? And to Cheryl's point as well,
Mhm.
we are really trying to establish that know, like, and trust
Mhm.
factor. If I want you to do business with me, you're probably not going to like me if I'm snarky back to you, right, Cheryl?
That no, candidly, there are those that like that wit. I'll call it wittiness, the witty nature, the
Mm.
snarkiness.
Mhm.
It also, I think, in a lot of aspects, we are responsible for bringing each other along,
True.
right? So if
Yeah.
you're telling
Mhm.
the person, you can look at that in my about section,
Yeah.
that will help them, and hopefully in the future they will do that for everyone they reach out to. So
Well,
yeah.
yeah, and it's always like a careful balance for me on that too, Cheryl. Like and it's like for me, like I look at these things as like this is an opportunity to demonstrate my personal brand. How can I do this in a way that I'm not trying to like put them in their place, but I'm trying to re-educate and bring them along in a way that's like, hey, actually, we certainly could have that conversation with you, but you might actually find it more efficient if you were to
Mhm.
go back to my profile. There's an about section. I've written it to answer that exact question. So doing so, it kind of helps me to stay on brand with that.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So let's see.
Authenticity.
Sina says she's been to 10 or more than 10 trade shows since last June, and almost everyone is shaking hands with me. So it looks like the handshakes are coming back out again. That's good to know.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
gonna guess that Encina is a trade show, an absolute trade show guru. I'm
Yeah.
gonna guess that most of those trade shows require vax and or COVID tests.
Okay.
Right? So
Yeah.
if I know I'm somewhere where there's a requirement that you show
True.
vaccination or a negative COVID test, not
Negative.
a positive, yes, chances are I'm going to be much more relaxed about it.
Yeah. Good. And
But
we
maybe
have
not.
yeah, I don't know. We'll see. And we got some other comments about, we were talking about the hugging and handshaking, and some people saying, "Hey, I'm not quite there yet."
Yeah.
But there's, we have to be understanding and just be conscientious of our audience, and we're
Mhm.
establishing trust, we're building trust, so we want to make sure we're being careful about that.
Yes.
Here's another comment from Sina. Finding that the turnover on both sides of the sale, client and vendor, carefully qualifying not just the company, but the vendor team is saving time resources. Thoughts on that, Cheryl?
Oh my gosh, so
Mhm.
true. That's such a great point, right? So that's why the service provider or supplier and the buyers are
Mhm.
going to stay. They're going to stay in this tech tool space because there's so much money being saved, right? And then it
Mhm.
just becomes like, how efficient can we be over Zoom versus the meeting, right? Are we
Right.
getting close to the onboarding? Does it make sense? So it becomes that consensus of, does it make sense to actually meet in person or to
Mhm.
stay, in a Zoom scenario?
Yeah. And
Great point.
to add on to that too, Sina, and for you, Cheryl, I don't know what the typical turnover is on the sales leadership side. I remember when I worked in marketing, they would say a marketing leader, whether it's director level and above, they'll typically change jobs every 3 to 5 years.
Mhm.
And pretty. I mean, even when now that I'm working on my own, I'm finding that I've had one person who's been in a VP of sales position. At his first company, he booked me for LinkedIn team training in person.
Mhm.
At his second company during the pandemic, he booked me for LinkedIn team training with his sales
Mhm.
team. And guess what? He just changed roles again. And I'm having a conversation with him about, I mean, I think it provides some opportunity, doesn't it, Cheryl, to keep track of people as they go along their career?
It really does. And I'll tell you that at one of the previous companies that I worked for, we found that because we would solve the problem, that
Mm,
those people would not only get promoted, but then of course they would or they would change companies.
right?
So yeah, I mean, you're pool and you've developed trust already. So why not continue down that path with the person? Because now they're not looking to develop trust with pure strangers, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I want to ask, somebody asked about my background. I'll address your question in a second, Sina. But Cheryl, I'm curious, your background, is that virtual, or do you have like a backdrop that you use when you're doing these sessions?
When this pseudo brick wall behind me.
Yeah. I was like, is
No,
it real? Are you like
it
sitting in front of your fireplace wall, or what
it
is
is
that? What
it
is
is
that
not
background?
real. It is not real. It is just a wall that it's all pseudo, but it's not a Zoom filter. And I'm
Right.
surprised people ask about it, and I feel like it looks like it's not real, but
Oh,
apparently it
I don't know.
does.
I mean, there's a little bit of like a light glare now that you're saying that behind you, but it's probably from your ring light or box light.
It is.
But I wanna like, let's move, because we're talking here about why buyers buy. So there's people that are on here today that are looking to sell. Why should we use an intentional background like you have? Like, why did you use that as opposed to whatever's behind you naturally?
Yeah, so I think, well, first of all, what was behind me naturally was a gray wall. So
Okay.
that
Mhm.
completely washed me out. There was nothing to it.
Mhm.
Then from there, I went to this background, and I've also used Zoom filters as well. I
Yeah.
feel like, candidly, it keeps, okay, so like Sina asked about these burgundy books in your background.
Right.
It really keeps the focus on me.
Right? Yeah.
Right? Yes. And
And
that's
that's
it.
it, because buyers were distracted, and I sometimes get people going, what is that? Does that say smile? It does. It says smile, like, up there. I mean, it's my books. It's a wall of my books that's behind me, and, I actually had my daughter, I got a new shipment of books in, and I'm like, I wanted her to stack more behind me, so it wasn't as many different things that were behind me,
Mhm.
and I've contemplated doing something as a solid color, and I've actually got another wall in my office that's all white, and I could go broadcast on that side, because then, Cheryl, the attention is just on you, and it's not on what is all this interesting stuff, right?
Right.
The shiny object
Exactly.
syndrome. Yeah.
Exactly. Shiny object syndrome. And it's not bad, especially if you've written a great book and you have them placed behind you, right?
Right.
But there are other things that people get distracted by that don't support your brand,
Right.
right?
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, and I think just because we are all in this virtual world now, I mean, this rectangular box that we live
Yes,
in, it's funny, we never really, people are I remember that expression, "You gotta think outside the box." Now you gotta think inside the box,
inside the
like, what
box.
is in your rectangle that you're showing,
When,
right?
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Well, I want to kind of change gears a little bit here, and start to wind our conversation down for the day here, Cheryl. I'm
Mhm.
going to pull up your LinkedIn profile up on screen. It's going to take me just a moment to do so. While I am
Sounds
pulling
good.
that up on screen, though, are you open to accepting invitations from individuals? Do you prefer people follow you? What's your preference there?
I am open and excited about both. So if you would like to connect, if you would mention Social Pie or Brenda Meller, that would be really helpful to give me some context.
Mhm.
And so that would be fantastic. And following is always ideal as well.
Awesome. And I see you've got the creator mode turned on. I can tell because it says talks about, and I see the hashtags that are
Yes.
listed in here. So when I see that, I know it's turned on. And I'm already connected with Cheryl. So when I visit her profile, I'm not going to see this. But when you all connect with Cheryl, when you go to her profile, you're going to see that the blue button will say follow. So if you want to connect with Cheryl, what you're going to need to do is go on over to the more button. And when you click on the more button, your drop down, one of the options will either be personalized invite or connect. Click
Mhm.
on either one of those, and then you'll get a box that will say either add a note or send. Click on add a note. Tell Cheryl that you watched her on today's social media pie. If there's something that was memorable to you, a tip or a piece of advice that she mentioned, include that in on your invitation to connect if you could. And let me pull that up on screen as well. It's
Great.
sometimes I forget when I'm piloting, I'm co-piloting and pilot. Like, oh, I got to put the URL up on screen here too. So there we have it, Cheryl. Any final comments for our group here today? And we were talking about big changes in why buyers buy post 2020. Any final comments on that, Cheryl?
So final comments. I think just being aware that your buyer is 70% down the path. So when you
Mhm.
come in, really come in as, and this is kind of a saying that I have for myself, just be your excellent best. And that means that you've got to do some preparation prior to coming in. A lot of the people that are on here probably already know that, but you'll need to take your preparation up a notch because they're really looking for impact from outcome. And when you come in and you're asking, tell me what your company's about, that's not grabbing their attention.
Right.
So and then being aware that there could be 6 to 8 buyers, I'm sorry, 6 to 8 decision makers in the buying process. So
Mhm.
understand, even if they're not in the room, they could be influencers, they could also be the executive sponsor, they could be the person that approves it. So you're speaking to a group, even though you may only be talking to 3 people, you're speaking to a larger group. So
Mhm.
always give your proposals, give your conversation legs to walk into whatever office may or may not be in the room with you, right?
Mhm.
Without overthinking it.
Awesome. I have
And
to just jump on what Sina was saying here, recommending Cheryl highly. She really knows her stuff. Yes, she does. If you're thinking about getting some help with sales training or anything along those lines, definitely reach out to Cheryl. And then Cheryl, any final comments on us? Or, anything you're working on right now, or anything you'd like to kind of tell us about your business?
yeah, so what I have found is that, excuse me, a lot of people, whether they be in sales, startup founders, whether they be sales leaders, they are looking to either gain clarity, build confidence, or get connected to their why, right? So I do have a clarity workshop that I'm working on right now, and I've actually delivered it at least twice. And
Mhm.
so that is just bit.ly/the dash clarity dash work dash shop, all dashes in between each word. And you can enroll there. And those go on every month or so. So there's always a new date. And if you miss it, there is a replay for a certain number of days. And then other than that, if you're interested in corporate training or you have a cross-functional team or you are looking to win your $1 million deal by bringing more voices into the room, please send me a DM. I would love to help, love to learn stories around what people are doing and help in any way I can.
That's awesome. So give me that web address again, because I tried typing it in and I got an error message, but I probably listened wrong.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's
okay.
go Lee.
bit.ly,
I'm sorry, say it again.
bit.ly, B-I-T.
Oh,
Dot,
bit.ly. Okay.
bit.ly / the word the dash clarity dash work dash shop.
Is it bit.ly.com?
Yeah, it's just bit.ly
It's
/
bit.ly. Okay.
Yep, just
Let me
bit.ly
try
/
this.
yep.
I don't think I did it right because it's not coming up for me.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna add it in afterwards, Cheryl, because I'm like failing miserably on this. I'm like, sometimes
Okay.
your brain is hearing and what I'm trying to type in, and I'm getting an error message on here. So I will drop that into the chat later on.
Appreciate it.
And you're saying that's a workshop that you're offering. Is that an ongoing, like once a month, or is it
Yeah,
periodic that you're offering this?
it's once a month, and typically
Okay.
the date changes. I've done it in the evenings. I've done it on a Saturday afternoon, but literally it's a way for you to really truly understand, where sometimes we're lacking in the confidence and the mindset to just go forward, right? And either I'll say make the call, even though that's old school, push the button on the email, or extend the connection request.
Yeah.
All of those things, but just how to show up as your unique, natural, best self in
Okay.
really any environment, whether it be business or personal.
Awesome. Well, we'll get that link into comments, so it'll be there a little bit later. Cheryl,
Awesome.
thank you so much. It was such a delight chatting with you here today. I picked up some new insights. The 70% thing is going to be sitting in my head like all day. When people come to me, I'm going to be like, they're at the finish line. Let's pull them over. I'm going to be hearing that all day long. Thank you so much, Cheryl. I really enjoyed our chat.
Thank you so much. I was looking forward to it, and I can't believe that we are at the end of our time, but I really appreciate your time. Thanks,
Oh,
everyone.
likewise. Well, thank you. And I want to remind everyone, if you joined a little bit late, you can always go click back to the beginning, watch the playback. As soon as we're done, it'll replay, and still leave comments in there. If you have any questions or comments from Cheryl, leave them in there. I'll share the link with her so that she can look back at this a little bit later. And as soon as the video is done, could you do us a favor? There's a share button at the bottom of the video. So as soon as it's done playing, you can click and share, and you can share that as a LinkedIn post. And that can be your post for the day. You don't have to post anything else. You can use this as your post for the day. And you can say, just finished watching at Cheryl Parks. Cheryl, tag her in the post in there. And talking about changes in why buyers buy post 2020. Maybe share a key takeaway or two, or maybe tag someone in your network who might be interested in this topic. Kind of positions you as that thought leader, that person, that go-to resource. So nice little pro tip for you. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay safe and stay healthy, everyone. And Cheryl, I hope to see you at some point, whether it's through the big money, the retreats or events, or maybe at a conference
Yes,
in the future. But I feel like we know each other, even though we've never met in person. But I do look forward to that day when we get to actually meet in person.
absolutely. Me too. And thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. All right, everybody, have a wonderful day. Take care, and we will see you all around LinkedIn. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.